This Learn Electrics video came about after I spotted a few questions about solar PV on social media. So we will take a brief introductory look at the inverter part of the installation in your house. I've summed up the various questions into the following. I have a solar PV system and any excess power goes to the national grid system. So how does the inverter in my house make the DC voltage into an AC voltage? Now that's a good question and a part of the house installation that is often least understood. This magic box that converts from DC to AC. Before we begin, we need to get some of the terminology sorted out. Sometimes the differences in function between an inverter and a rectifier are misunderstood. So what are the differences? An inverter takes a DC voltage and changes it into an AC voltage using an H-bridge. This clever arrangement is going to switch the DC input into a very crude AC by very rapidly changing the positive and negative inputs into the system. After some smoothing, we should have a nice 230 volt AC voltage, and we will look at this in more detail in a moment. A rectifier, on the other hand, changes an AC voltage into a DC voltage, often from the secondary side of a transformer. The transformer will take an alternating AC voltage, reduce the output from, say, 230 volts to just 5 volts, and then change the AC into a smooth, unaltering direct current or DC to charge your mobile phone. Let's start with the basic flow of a solar PV system, one that I'm sure many of you will already know. Beginning on the left, we have our solar panels, and these can be configured to many different patterns for the many different roofs found up and down the country. The sun is shining and the solar panels are producing electricity, a DC voltage. The DC voltage first enters a protection stage of breakers and other protective devices, as you would expect. Think of this as doing a similar job to your domestic consumer unit. If there's a problem, you want it stopping before it reaches other parts of the system downstream and before it causes any damage. Next, there is the MPPT unit, standing for Maximum Power Point Tracking. The MPPT unit will monitor the voltage and current being produced and make adjustments as the energy from the sunlight varies during the day in order to optimize the energy being collected. Then we have the inverter stage, where the optimized DC voltage is converted into an alternating current at 230 volts, a voltage that is usable within the property and in sync with the national grid. The next important section is the low-pass filters that essentially remove any spikes from the inverter output and smooth it to produce an almost perfect waveform. The last part is the grid relay. It's important that any electricity fed onto the grid will not cause any problems with the grid. And just as important as synchronization of frequency and amplitude is the requirement for an anti-islanding function. Anti-islanding means that if there is a problem with the grid, a power outage for example, then your system in your house will almost instantly disconnect from the grid. This matters. It's needed in order to protect your property from damage by the grid defects, and it is also essential to isolate your system to protect National Grid engineers when they are making repairs. A single solar panel might only produce 48 watts of power, let's say 12 volts at 4 amps. So, how do we build up voltage and power to something usable inside the house, something that will run appliances? By putting 4 panels in series, we can increase the DC voltage to 48 volts, but the current remains at 4 amps. If we now put the solar panels in parallel, we will preserve the 48 volt output voltage and increase the output current that is available from the combined field of panels to 16 amps. This has now increased the power output from an initial 48 watts, 12 volts times 4 amps, to 768 watts, 48 volts times 16 amps. Now we must increase the number of panels in series, and this will increase the output voltage to a usable and significant number of volts. If your house installation is G98 compliant, you will have a feed-in limit to the national grid of 3.68 kilowatts. That's 230 volts at 16 amps. How does the inverter work? That was the original question. An inverter fakes a sine wave by rapidly switching the DC input from the solar panels into pulses in a process called pulse width modulation, or PWM for short. The wider the pulse, the greater the voltage that can be derived from it, as we shall see. It then filters these pulses until only a smooth 50 Hz sine wave remains. All the while, a control system keeps the output sine wave locked to the grid frequency and within limits. If this manufactured sine wave is not exactly matched to the national grid frequency, then we will have a problem. But, of course, there are safeguards to prevent this. The inverter process begins with a very clever arrangement of switches called an H-bridge. H because it makes a letter H shape. This is the basic H-bridge arrangement in its simplest form. The key to this is to understand how the switches operate, and you will see these numbered 1 to 4 on the drawing. They are shown here as mechanical switches to aid understanding, but in reality they will be semiconductor devices. On the left is the direct current solar panel or panels, and in the centre is our load, shown here as a 230 volt alternating current twin socket outlet, with the H-bridge arrangement between the two types of voltage. The DC volts from the solar panel only travel in one direction and are a constant amplitude. There is a positive output from the panel and a negative output. I prefer to use the classical convention of current flow and visualize the current movement being from positive to negative as shown by the arrows, and most of the engineering world follows the same direction. If you're a purist, however, and want to be strictly accurate, then electrons actually flow the other way round, from negative to positive. Why the difference? Back in the early days of electrical theory, nobody knew about electrons, and it was just assumed that something moved through the wires. It was assumed that this thing moved from positive to negative because nobody knew any different, and thus it became accepted as conventional flow. The load, however, requires AC volts that are alternating positive, negative, and so on. Let's look now at how it does this. On the next few drawings, I've shown the positive DC voltage in red and the negative voltage in blue. Note that switches 2 and 3 must not and cannot be closed at the same time as switches 1 and 4. We begin by closing switches 1 and 4. This allows positive DC voltage to flow along the red wire and through switch 1 and then along wire A and into the AC socket. It does whatever work it has to do and exits along wire B through the switch number 4 before returning to the negative of the solar panel along the blue wire. We have current flow from A to B in the direction of the black and yellow arrow. The little chart on the right shows this as A is positive and B is negative. Remember, we are using conventional current flow today. Now, switches 1 and 4 will open and switches 2 and 3 will close. This time, the positive flow from the solar panel travels through switch number 2, passes along wire B this time, then through the socket and onto wire A, through the switch number 3 and back along the blue wire to the solar panel. It always travels from the red wires to the blue wires on these drawings. But look at the direction of flow for the current through the socket. This time it's reversed direction and moved in the B to A direction, as shown again by the checkered arrow. B is now the positive and A is the negative. It's alternated or flipped over. Take a look at the chart at bottom right. Now the switches change position again. Switches 2 and 3 open and switches 1 and 4 close. Current flows along the red wire, through switch 1, along wire A, through the socket and out along wire B, through switch 4 and back to the solar panel along the blue wire. The voltage polarity has changed again, flowing from A to B. The H-bridge changes state once again. Switches 1 and 4 now open and switch 2 and 3 close. Positive voltage still flows along the red wires, through switch 2 and along wire B. Passing through the socket, it leaves on wire A, goes through switch 3 and returns on the blue wires. The movement of current has been in the direction of B to A, as shown by the black and yellow arrow. Looking at column A of the table, we can see that the voltage polarity at point A is alternating between positive, negative, positive, negative. The H bridge has changed the voltage from a unidirectional flow into an alternating AC current. It is inverting or reversing the signal each time. The H bridge actually uses semiconductor devices to switch the voltage, to make the inversions. Mechanical switches would never do the job. They cannot physically switch fast enough to make a meaningful AC output. Each switch is controlled by another semiconductor device that will enable the semiconductor switches to operate on and off maybe 100,000 times a second or more in order to achieve an accurate replication of a 50 Hz sine wave. We can look at that now. I've called this next bit making waves. It's about how the inverter stage and pulse width modulation work. Where do we start? What happens at the inverter stage? We begin with a square wave. The switched or flip-flopped solar panel voltage is just a full positive voltage on or a full negative voltage on and repeat. A positive square wave followed by a negative. But we want a nice smooth sine wave output that rolls gently from 0 to a maximum positive, falls gently to a maximum negative and returns to 0 so that it can do the whole thing again. Besides, if the sine wave is not a G98 compliant waveform, it does not match the sine wave on the grid in terms of amplitude and frequency, then it must not be offered to the grid. So, square wave to sine wave, how? This is how it is done. So easy, so simple, when you know how. But of course, there's a lot of electronics behind it. To start with, two things happen. The electronics will generate a high-frequency triangle wave, 100,000 times a second or more. In addition to this, the current grid frequency and amplitude at that moment in time is sampled and continually sampled. This is important for constant matching to the grid. These two signals, the generated triangle wave and the sampled sine wave, are fed into a comparator circuit where they are, well, compared to each other. The comparator will look at both waveforms, and if the sine wave voltage is more than the triangle wave voltage, then the comparator will enable the MOSFETs, the semiconductor switches, on the H bridge to be switched on at high frequency. In our case, switches 1 and 4 for positive going voltages, and switches 2 and 3 for the negative part of the waveform, as we shall now see. If we overlay the two signals, we can see what the comparators can see and how they create this pulse width modulation. When the reference sine wave is greater than the triangle wave, they switch the H bridge on and output a voltage. When the reference sine wave is less than the triangle wave, then the H bridge is off and there is no output. We end up with a series of pulses, far more than are shown here, some positive and some negative. The width of the pulse is an indication of the amplitude of the reference sine wave. The no pulse areas are where the sine wave is less than the triangle wave, so no voltage is allowed through. The narrower pulses are an indication of a lower amplitude of the reference sine wave, less voltage required, and the wide pulses are created when the sine wave is close to its maximum amplitude, so lots of volts needed. The width of each pulse will determine the voltage level of the soon-to-be-created actual sine wave. So we have the pulse width modulated output. Now we use a low-pass LC filter to remove any spikes and low-frequency noise, allowing only a voltage centered around 50 cycles per second in the UK and Europe and 60 Hz in the USA and many other countries to pass through. The inductors, the L part of LC, don't like high-frequency changes, so they will absorb high-frequency spikes. Some of the capacitors, the C parts of the LC assembly, will also filter out any spikes, whilst other, larger capacitors will act as reservoirs that store the output currents when a PWM voltage is present and release it slowly back into the circuit when the PWM signal is not present. In other words, they fill in the gaps between the pulses according to how much the previous pulse has charged the capacitor up. They will smooth the waveform to manufacture a near-perfect sinusoidal waveform. And that is a very brief and simple explanation of how an inverter works, in the case of a solar panel PV inverter that can pass current to the national grid. The inverter circuit will compare a high-frequency triangle wave to the reference sine wave sampled from the actual national grid. It will use a semiconductor H-bridge that will create a pulse-width modulated output that is then put through a low-pass LC filter to smooth the output into the acceptable sine wave that correctly matches the frequency and amplitude of the grid. Any excess electricity is fed to the grid by raising the output voltage to slightly higher than the grid so that current flows out of the house installation according to G98 and 99 rules. I hope you found this video informative and that it's added a little more knowledge to your mental toolbox. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe to our channel to get access to all of our videos, and remember to click on notify to be sure of not missing our next video. And don't forget, you can also type in Learn Electrics into the YouTube search bar to go directly to our channel at any time from any computer or smart device. We are always adding new videos to our channel, so don't miss the next one. And once again, thank you for watching, and we hope to see you again very soon.